I'll start with the last part of supply chapter. In this part, the first topic that I'll deal with is movement along the supply curve. Movement along the supply curve or change in quantity supplied. Same topic has two names: movement along the supply curve or change in quantity supplied. This topic has two concepts and both are graphical concepts, as you can see here. The two concepts. The first one, I've drawn a usual shaped supply curve, that means upward sloping supply curve. On the supply curve, I have marked 2 points A and B. Corresponding to point A, price is P1, quantity supplied is Q1. Corresponding to point B, price is P2, quantity supplied is Q2. Now, see this arrow is from A to B. Thus, when we move from one point to another point in the upward direction along the same supply curve, it implies price rises, so quantity supplied also rises. Price rises, so quantity supplied also rises. This is known as extension or expansion of supply. Extension or expansion of supply. Here, only price changes. Price rises, so quantity supplied rises. Other factors determining supply, other factors affecting supply are not changing. Now, this is the first concept. This is the second concept, which is exactly opposite to this one. As you can see here, the usual shaped supply curve upward sloping. I've marked 2 points here, R and T. R, the upper one, lower one, T. Now, here there's an arrow which shows we are moving down. We are moving down from point R to point T. That means we are moving down from one point to another point in downward direction along the same supply curve. This implies that the price is falling. Price falls and so quantity supplied contracts, falls. Therefore, this is known as contraction of supply. Contraction of supply. Here also, like in this case, here also, other determinants of supply, other factors of supply are unchanged, only price changes. Thus, these two cases, these two concepts taken together, we call it movement along the supply curve or change in quantity supplied. And in both cases, in both these concepts, law of supply is followed. Because law of supply says price rises, supply rises, price falls, supply falls, other things remaining constant, and that is visible here. So this is the topic, movement along the supply curve or change in quantity supplied. Now I come to the next topic. The next topic is shift of the supply curve. Shift of the supply curve. This shift of the supply curve also has another name. The other name for shift of the supply curve is change in supply. Very much like the previous topic, in this topic also there are two concepts, and this topic also has two names. This topic also has two names. The two names are shift of the supply curve or change in supply. Shift of the supply curve or change in supply. Now, as the name signifies, here the first concept, there are two concepts, both are graphical again. The first concept in this, we will consider two supply curves parallel to each other. Both are usual shape, that means upward sloping. But the two supply curves are parallel, and in between the two supply curves there will be a rightward arrow. This rightward arrow signifies that the entire supply curve is shifting towards right. If there is a rightward shifting of the supply curve, then what happens? Basically, when there is a rightward shifting of the supply curve, the price remains constant, and at the same price, a larger quantity or an increased quantity is supplied. This is known as increase in supply. But in this case, it doesn't follow law of supply, because law of supply says price rises, then supply rises. But here, price doesn't change, price is constant. And as price is constant, how can supply change? Yes, supply changes because of a change in the other factors affecting supply, other determinants of supply, like goals of the firms, techniques of production, input prices, That is the other factors determining supply. Those are changing. Because of change in those, the supply curve shifts towards right, and an increased quantity is supplied at the same price. This I am drawing for the first one. Just now I explained that. Along the x-axis quantity supplied, along the y-axis price as usual. Now I draw two supply curves parallel to each other. S1, S1, S2, S2. In between the two supply curves, there is a rightward arrow which shows that the entire supply curve S1, S1 shifts towards right to S2, S2. Now if I draw a horizontal price line like this, suppose it's P0 the price, then at the same price a larger quantity or an increased quantity is supplied, Q1, Q2. See, at the same price we find increased quantity supplied. This is the first case, and this is called increase in supply. Increase in supply. Here, law of supply is not followed, because law of supply says price rises then supply rises. But here, price is constant but still supply is increasing. This is increase in supply. Now, the second concept here is exactly opposite to this one. In the second concept, we find very much like the usual thing. That means along the x-axis we measure quantity supplied, along the y-axis we measure price. Again I draw two supply curves parallel to each other. S2, S2, this is S3, okay, this is S2, sorry, this is S2 and this is S3. Let me make it S3. Here I put a leftward arrow. There it was rightward arrow, this is leftward arrow. If I put a leftward arrow, what happens? Let this be P0 again. Price is same, price is P0. At the same price, quantity Q2, this is Q3, we find a decreased quantity supplied. A decreased quantity supplied at the same price. So this is known as decrease in supply. Decrease in supply. And these two concepts taken together, the topic's name is shift of the supply curve or change in supply. Shift of the supply curve or change in supply. So I have covered two consecutive topics, movement along the supply curve or changing quantity supplied, and then I have covered this one, which is shift of the supply curve or change in supply. Now the entire supply chapter is almost complete. Now we have to turn to elasticity of supply. As you people are quite aware of elasticity of demand, particularly price elasticity of demand, so this will be very clear, very easy for you to understand, because in case of elasticity of demand, you have studied that there are three concepts: price elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand, and cross elasticity of demand. But here in case of elasticity of supply, we have only one concept. We have here only one concept, and that is price elasticity of supply. Here it's only one. Now, what is elasticity of supply, or what is price elasticity of supply? By this time, you have come to know the law of supply. And law of supply says price rises, supply rises, or when price falls, supply falls. Suppose you are given the data that by how much percentage the price has changed, price of a commodity has changed, and also in the data you are given by how much percentage due to that price change, by how much percentage the quantity supplied has changed. Two things you are given: percentage change in price and percentage change in quantity supplied. Now, if you are required to compare these two things, that means you are comparing the percentage change in quantity supplied with respect to, in response to, the percentage change in price. How do you compare? Now you know the basics of elasticity of demand, so you can answer here. It is a fraction. By using a fraction of these two, we can express or we can compare the two. So here the fraction is ES, that means elasticity of supply, is equal to percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. So this is the basic expression, you can say basic formula of price elasticity of supply. Now if you ask me, is this the definition? No, this is not the definition. This is the basic formula, basic expression, or we can say the meaning. Now if you ask me the definition, let me say the definition of price elasticity of supply. Price elasticity of supply is defined as the degree of responsiveness of the change in quantity supply of a commodity in response to a certain change in the price of the commodity. I repeat, price elasticity of supply refers to or is defined as the degree of responsiveness. Mind that you have to use these words ditto. Word to word, these words you have to use. It is defined as the degree of responsiveness of a change in quantity supply of a commodity in response to a certain change in the price of the commodity. This is the definition. You have to mug up fully, and if the question comes, you have to write that exactly. Now, this formula, we can write it symbolically. How to write symbolically? ES is equal to delta QS by delta P into P by QS. This is the formula where P denotes initial price of the commodity. QS denotes initial quantity supply. Delta QS, change in quantity supply. Delta P, change in the price. So this is the symbolic representation of the formula, symbolic representation of the formula of price elasticity of supply. So this is the basic or fundamental thing about price elasticity of supply. Now there are 5 degrees or values or magnitudes of price elasticity of supply. There are 5 degrees. A very similar topic you have covered in price elasticity of demand. A very similar topic. Here also we have that same thing. What are those 5 values or 5 degrees or 5 magnitudes? ES is equal to 0, ES is equal to infinity, ES is equal to 1, ES greater than 1, and ES less than 1. ES is elasticity of supply. So these are the 5 degrees or 5 values or 5 magnitudes of price elasticity of supply. First one, ES is equal to 0. That means price elasticity of supply is equal to 0. Now when ES is equal to 0, it implies that price may rise or price may fall, but the quantity supplied remains constant. Price may rise or price may fall, but the quantity supplied remains constant. This is the case when ES is equal to 0. Our price elasticity of supply is equal to 0. And the name of this, perfectly inelastic or completely inelastic supply. This is the first one. And here in this case, the supply curve is a vertical straight line. Here we measure price and here quantity supplied. Now as the supply curve is vertical, it's evident here price may rise or price may fall, but quantity supply remains constant. So this is the case of perfectly inelastic or completely inelastic supply. Number 2, ES is equal to infinity. When ES is equal to infinity, it implies the opposite of this one. That means at the same price remains constant, and at the same price different quantities can be supplied, and even a very large, infinitely large quantity also can be supplied at the same price. Then here the supply curve is, that was vertical, this is horizontal. A horizontal supply curve. See here, if I extend it, here it's price P0. At the same price, different quantities can be supplied. Here we measure quantity supply, here we measure price. Then we find at the same price, different quantities are supplied. Even this goes on. That means an infinitely large quantity can be supplied at the same price. The name for this one is perfectly elastic supply or completely elastic supply. So 2 out of 5 I've covered till now. Now I'll come to the third one. The third one, ES is equal to 1. Now, when we consider ES is equal to 1, that means elasticity of supply is equal to 1. It implies the percentage change in the quantity supplied, or simply change in quantity supplied is proportionately equal to change in price. Change in price and change in quantity supplied are proportionately equal. Then in this case, this is number 3, ES is equal to 1. Then in this case, what is the nature of the supply curve? See, when ES is equal to 1 and change in supply, change in quantity supplied and change in price are proportionately equal, the supply curve is quantity supplied and here price. Any straight line, upward sloping straight line, any upward sloping straight line to the origin. Here it's okay. Any upward sloping straight line, S1, S2, S3, whatever I draw like this, then in any straight line, in case of any straight line, upward sloping straight line, from the origin, we have ES is equal to 1. ES is equal to 1. In every case, ES is equal to 1. So you have to remember this. It's not only a vertical, diagonal type of line, any upward sloping straight line from the origin. Here, ES is equal to 1. And the name of this is unitary elastic supply. Unitary elastic supply. Now I come to number 4. The fourth one is ES greater than 1. If ES is greater than 1, elasticity of supply or price elasticity of supply is greater than 1. It implies change in the quantity supplied is proportionately greater than change in price. Change in the quantity supplied is proportionately greater than change in price. So here the supply curve is a flatter upward sloping, gentle slope, flatter upward sloping straight line, and you may draw it from the y-axis. As usual, here we measure price, and along the x-axis we measure quantity supply. Then it's a upward sloping straight line surely, but it is flatter, gentle slope. You may start from the y-axis, no harm, that's preferred. So here we have ES equal to 1. See, if you draw two lines and then you draw two vertical lines, say this is change in quantity supply, this is change in price. So change in quantity supply is greater, change in price is less. This is known as relatively elastic supply or highly elastic supply or elastic supply. Relatively elastic supply or highly elastic supply or elastic supply. This is number 4. And now we'll come to the last one, that is number 5. In number 5, ES is less than 1. If ES is less than 1, just the opposite of the previous one. Here, change in quantity supplied is proportionately less than change in price. Change in quantity supplied is less than change in price proportionately, comparatively. So here, the supply curve is upward sloping surely, but it will be a steeper one. Steeper one. Along the x-axis price, along the y-axis price, along the x-axis quantity supplied. Now, see, if I draw any two lines, horizontal price lines and then the quantity supplied lines. See, this is the change in the quantity supplied, this is the change in the price. See, this gap is much more, which shows change in quantity supplied is less, change in price is more. The name of this one is relatively inelastic supply or highly inelastic supply, or simply just inelastic supply. Thus, I complete all the 5 degrees or values or magnitudes of price elasticity of supply. Now, in this elasticity of supply, the last topic to be covered now in this chapter of elasticity of supply is methods of measuring price elasticity of supply. Methods of measuring price elasticity of supply. In that, we have 2 methods. One method, the first number 1 method, is percentage or proportionate method. That I don't think I have to do it again, because that was a basic thing which I have taught you just now. That is percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. I want to show you that symbolic representation. That is actually percentage or proportionate method. Delta QS by delta P into P by QS. ES is equal to that thing. So that is percentage or proportionate method. Now the second method. There are 2 methods. This is the second method, the last one, and this is point or geometric method. Point or geometric method. The name signifies geometric, so graphical. Actually, there are three cases here. First one, I draw steep supply curve, usual upward sloping, along the x-axis price, y-axis, along the x-axis quantity supply, y-axis measures price. On the supply curve, I mark a point like this. Let it be K. Then our purpose, our objective is to determine the price elasticity of supply at this point K. Mind it, I'll get a steeper one. Now here, what is the first step? Your first step will be extend the lower end of the supply curve so that it goes and touches the x-axis at the point A. I would advise you to stick to this, name it A only. Then the next step, the second step is from the given point K, you drop a perpendicular. You drop a perpendicular like this. A perpendicular is drawn. You know what is perpendicular. And I name it B. Again, I would advise you to stick to this. You name it B only. After doing this is the origin. Oh. Then now the formula. At the given point K, ES is equal to length of AB by length of OB. Length of AB, so I'm giving this bar. This bar signifies length. So length of AB divided by length of OB. This length by this length. As we can see, very easily revealed here, this length is smaller, less, and this length is more. So as the numerator is less than denominator, so it's less than 1. Then in this case, here, when the supply curve is steeper, we find the elasticity of supply is less than 1. Second case, origin, quantity supply, price. Now, I draw a supply curve in such a way, if the lower end is extended, it goes and touches the origin. So here there's a point, okay, K again. Drop the perpendicular, is the perpendicular. Where it touches, I'm naming it A, B. And where the lower end touches, again A. Then here, you can notice that the origin is A. The origin is the A, the point A. Then, in this case, ES is equal to same formula, AB by OB. AB and OB, the two lengths, the two distances are same here because it touches the origin. As numerator and denominator are equal here, so it's equal to 1. Then in this case, elasticity of supply is 1. Here it's less than 1. There is yet another case, and that's the last one. This is the last one. Along the x-axis quantity supplied, along the y-axis price. Now, I've drawn a supply curve which is upward sloping straight line, but it's flatter, gentle sloped. Now, a point on it. Okay, let me name it R. Then, our purpose is to define the price elasticity of supply at the point R. Then, if we adopt the same step or similar step, what would happen? It would cross the y-axis and go beyond. Yes, if it does, we have to. For that, we have to extend the left portion of the x-axis beyond the origin. First, we will do that. Now, we will extend. Now, we will extend the lower end of the supply curve, and it touches where it touches the x-axis. Name it A. Same name. We have to. And where R, the given point is, from that the same step perpendicular. Then where it touches, I'm naming it B. I told you to stick to that. So here the supply, elasticity of supply formula, again the same thing. AB bar by OB bar, and here we find AB distance is more, OB distance is less. So length of AB is greater than length of OB. That means 1. Y is greater than 1. Y greater than 1. Here the numerator is greater